All right. Well, hello, everyone. I don't know what prevented everybody from getting in tonight, but it looks like we've got several people out. They're going to... Green beer. Yeah, green beer. Yeah. They're rolling in. They're rolling into class, slopping down into a seat. That used to happen every year at Miami University when I was there. They had they couldn't celebrate St. Patrick's Day because they always scheduled their spring break in a different week, and so every year they had Green Beer Day, and then students would come into class all day completely drunk. I mean, just like falling all over the place, trying to interact with sunglasses on, like people don't know what's going on. I got something I need to say, Professor. That was ridiculous. Anyway, well, on that note, it is going to get a little bit weird tonight because we're going to be discussing New Age ideologies and neo-paganism and animism. And so this gets a little bit strange. Some of you guys, this will be more familiar to you. I'm used to teaching this to high schoolers. You guys remember a little bit of the 60s movements and the psychedelic movement that actually instigated some of this stuff. So I'll be interested to hear some input from you guys on some of these issues. Let's start out with a word of prayer as we get rolling tonight. Our Lord and God, we give you praise. And thank you again, Father, for the opportunity to study, to think, to reason together. Father, again, we ask that you would help compartmentalize our minds so that they might serve you best. To that end, God, we say that we are not naturally wise necessarily, and so we ask divine intervention. Help us to understand beyond our means and to be able to advance your kingdom with whatever you're willing to put there in our minds. We love you, O Lord. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Before we get rolling tonight, if you guys would, grab your Bibles, open up to Galatians chapter 1. Galatians 1. Not yet, no. Oh, there you go. Galatians chapter 1. And would someone read verse 8 for me? When you locate it.
But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to what we have preached to you, he is to be accursed.
Okay. What does the text say? Break it down. Even if we or an angel in heaven should preach a gospel, or you should preach a gospel other than the one we preached to you. Okay. All right. So if you're hearing something that does not cohere with what Jesus Christ taught, what Paul and the apostles taught to the church, that person is to be accursed. What that person is bringing you is vile, it's wretched. Okay. Keeping that in mind as a Christian, most of us have probably had a very visceral reaction to hearing New Age ideologies. There's something in your spirit probably where a lot of this stuff crops up and you hear it and immediately something in you goes, this is wrong, this is off. There's something messed up here. Now, there's an indication in that text that, it might be exaggeration, the idea that even were an angel to show up, you're not to believe an angel if it says something other than this. But is it possible that that's more than just hyperbole? Yeah. Okay, so we have the possibility of these other spirit creatures that are intervening and doing things, saying things. Mm-hmm. Joseph Smith? Yeah. That's okay. I heard what you meant. But yeah, so there's this idea that it's possible that as things progress, that we might, and Jesus gave indications of this, that that there might be wonder workers and other things that come along as all this progresses. That being said, of all the worldviews we've dealt with, I think the one place you're going to see an entry of those things, most likely, if that is going to come into the world stage, I think it's going to be through New Age ideologies. That's why I think this poses a particular danger to Christianity, maybe even over and above some of the other worldviews. We'll get into that in just a moment. Worldview is a set of presuppositions. Presuppositions? Assumptions, which may be true or not true, could be entirely false, but they're assumptions on which we base what we believe. right? So they kind of form the bedrock of how we function in life. That's essentially what a worldview is. Let's quickly review where we've been. What is monotheism? There's one God, okay? Religions that occupy monotheistic traditions. Islam, Judaism, Christianity, okay. Deism, what is deism? Right, okay, so the watchmaker God, he creates the universe, sets it turning, steps back, not going to intervene. All right, naturalism or materialism? Okay, yeah, matter, energy, space-time, those things are real. The natural world is real. God, spirits, anything like that, not real. Okay, nihilism. All right, there is no meaning, no purpose. Reality is entirely subjective in every respect. You can't know anything. You're going to die beyond your means. Hooray! Nihilism. Nobody can stay in nihilism. Can't stay in nihilism because, goodness, that's depressing. And so true nihilists end up in insane asylums and they end up killing themselves. It's just a very normative part of what it is to be a nihilist. And then existentialism, because people can't stay a nihilist. Yeah, existentialism it's kind of an affirmation of nihilism. There is no meaning, no purpose. It's an affirmation of naturalism. The world is just a material thing. But then you basically say, but we're going to make up meaning. We're going to create it on our own. And so you put together your own elaborate meanings. Whatever is personally significant to you is the thing that really matters. Right? That's existentialism. Last week, we went to the East, and it got a little strange. Eastern pantheistic monism. Can we break it down? Okay, all is God, all is one. So Eastern, it's from the East. Pantheistic, meaning all is God. Pan means all, theos, God. And then monism, one. All is God and all is one. And when they say God, do they mean what we mean when we say God? Okay, lowercase g, right? It's everything taken together as a whole. That is what we call God, lowercase g. It's more like a force, right? It's not like a personality that you could engage with. All right, all that said, let's get weird. Yeah.
Every time I hear that, when all is one,
Yes.
one is all, the next thing that comes in my head is the rock and not the roll. Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
So now it makes me wonder, part of that song.
I love that you just said it makes me wonder, because that's part of that song as well. And it makes me wonder.
Part of that song was trying to report that concept.
Yeah. The 60s had a lot of, really a lot of ideologies that came from the East that just became pervasive all through the West. And you'll see even like motifs that we're going to use from paganism and from pagan mythologies that creep in there. And it's not just there. I mean, it's in the church too. You've got weird creep that happens where this stuff just gets in all over the place. But certainly with rock, particularly in the 70s, a lot of that stuff started, people were kind of into the more dark black magic type things. And so that became an appeal for like, especially adolescent males. There was this appeal that was being made through that. And of course, the church's reaction probably made some of those adolescent males just want it all the more and chase after it. New Age and neo-paganism. All right. This is kind of a weird conglomeration of existentialism, we're going to make it up, with Eastern pantheistic monism. All right, so the two things kind of start coming together, and then we also get a mixed bag of other ideologies that are out there. There's one that we haven't done called animism. Animism is the belief that there's like spirit significance in everything. So why did the river flood? Well, it's because the spirit of the river was angry. And this is like tribal. This is like most of the tribes in the world and in the ancient world, like the Paleolithic type tribes, they were all operating on this system. That's animism, right? So there's spirits in everything. There's a spirit of the coffee mug. It might not be well developed yet because it was just made, but there's a spirit of the thermos. Good band name, Spirit of the Thermos. And so this is the idea with animism. All right. Now, the reason I say that is because you're going to see that emerge in neo-pagan traditions. And then you're going to see Eastern pantheistic monism emerge. and you're going to see existentialism emerge, and you're going to see naturalism emerge, and you're going to see them appropriating Christianity, and they're going to appropriate Buddhism and Hinduism. They're going to grab almost every worldview they can get a hold of, and they're just throwing it all in. So they like your view. And a New Age, and think about this as we go along. I want you to ask the question, why are New Age people so difficult to argue with? All right? Just hang on to that. And as we progress, I want you to think that through. Okay, so popular recognition of New Age ideologies. Oprah is a purveyor of New Age ideologies. Star Wars is a purveyor of New Age ideologies. I particularly enjoyed this cartoon. Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father." And Oprah's there. And he, of course, he's aghast. But yes, Oprah is, when you watch Oprah, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Oprah will have a show where she's just all about this author and what he's saying. And then the next week, something completely contradictory to the previous author. And oh, she's just all about that. And that's great. And that's wonderful. New Age ideologies do this a lot. There's tons of contradiction in New Age ideologies. You'll see why as we go along. Popular New Age ideologies and practices. Meditation. Now, wait a minute. Is all meditation bad? No. Okay, so what would distinguish a Christian version of meditation from an Eastern version of meditation or New Age meditation? What do you do as a Christian when you meditate? Pray? Yeah.
Think on God, listen to God.
Think on God, listen to God. Okay. And so this becomes one of the major distinctions. A lot of New Age traditions look for transcendental meditation. The idea is there is a spirit self, and that spirit self can move beyond the body. It can go to mind at large, or it can expand beyond the human consciousness. And I can touch the universe as a whole, or all these things are going to sound bizarre. You're going to be sick of them by the end. We'll try to define a lot of these as we go. But the idea is I can move outside of my body. I'm a spirit creature on some level, and I can do things that go beyond the physical realm. All right, so meditation, crystal focus. What's the interest in crystals? What's the deal there?
I've talked to people out in Sedona.
Yeah.
Supposedly they have power.
Okay, and this is the idea. They have power. And if you ask them why, they'll say, well, it's part of just the way the natural world works. They always have. Why? I think really what it boils down to is they're structured and kind of pretty. And what you're going to find with a lot of New Age ideologies is they're really big on light. Like anything that is light, when they're doing their descriptions, anything they can describe as light or luminous tends to fit very well in there. So they wear crystals. It ties them to earth, they think, and maybe it helps them to focus things. I don't know if you know this or not. I don't know if I've ever told you the story. Did I ever tell you the Serpent Mound story? You know Serpent Mound in Ohio, the really cool Indian mound that is very old. They had a vandalism episode there. I think it was back in the 70s, late 70s maybe. A vandalism episode where they found all of these people out, like when the park rangers went in at the front of the day, they found all these people there on the Serpent Mound, and they had brought tens of thousands of crystals, and they had shoved them in all over the mound, and they were waiting for like this gateway to open up or something. But they thought that like they were going to bring about some weird thing, and it was like 70 or 80 people, and then all these crystals shoved into the mound. And so they tried to arrest a lot of them. A lot of them ran and stuff. But
I don't think some of this can be based in the Old Testament.
Mhm.
Aaron's breastplate.
Yeah.
What that talks about.
Sure. And one of the things you're going to see a lot of the New Age ideologies do is try to appropriate things that you would recognize as a Christian as being like a part of what we do or how we function. And they'll try to grab that and say, well, you've got a partial understanding, but we really understand how it really works because we've got an expanded mind. And so that's one of the things that they'll do. And by the way, they love to reference scripture and pick scripture. A lot of different worldviews and ideologies do. They'll pull things that they like and go, see, that's what was happening here. This Urim and Thummim, this divining tool that's being used, we do that too. you're just doing what, we're just doing what they did in the Old Testament.
You know, the crystal sales in the US alone is worth $1 billion.
Is it really? Wow.
What did you do? What?
The use of crystals and stones
Mm.
in the practice of healing is $1 billion. Wow.
Man.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
The whole Beth church out in California, 11,000 members are into this and preach it when it's all.
Really? Yeah, that group I know has had some serious issues that they're bugging out big time.
Yes.
All right, drug use is another major feature of New Age ideologies. It was much bigger back in the 60s and 70s. Still prevalent today, but some of the early advocates for expanded consciousness did so using drug use, right? It was LSD and other things that you could use, psychedelic drugs to help you expand your mind. Sensory deprivation chambers. Is there anything morally wrong with a sensory deprivation chamber? No, it just keeps you from having sensation. If you're not familiar with them, it's a chamber. Usually it's got salt water. They kind of put you in it. You lay back in it. They heat it up to like just body temperature. And then you're deprived of all sight and sound. So you basically just sit in this chamber and it's like you're gone. Like there's no part of you that feels anything. So sometimes people will use it for just like to relax and stuff. They try to use it for transcendental meditation a lot of the time. The idea is the less I can think about my flesh, the more likely I can get out of it and go do other things. Copper pyramids? I don't know that offhand. I'd have to research that. That's not something that I'm certain on. I mean, this is a bigger project than learning any other world religion because it goes in 10,000 different directions. I just had a whole new teaching on this yesterday concerning enneagrams. Enneagrams? Have you heard of this? They're being used in churches all over the country. Some churches are actually like preaching them. Basically it's like a personality test. But a lot of people who have used it as a personality test don't know the origins. It wasn't put together by psychologists. It was put together by somebody I think early 1900s is when it started. But it was a guy who was doing automatic writing. You know what that is? All right. Yeah.
I think it was the Jesuit,
Richard Rohr. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's his name. Mm-hmm. And he's been affiliated with the emergence of all sorts of kind of weird spiritualist ideas. It's interesting, actually, just in terms of spiritual dynamics, the scriptures seem to indicate that there are demonic presences that are regional. So there's this area called the burned over district of New York. And during a certain 40-year span, they had 6 or 8 major cults emerge from this area where and the modern spiritist movement was one of them. I want to say the Mormons were part of the participatory group. It was as Joseph Smith was being ousted from that region, but it's like a whole bunch of these things just emerged from that area right at that time. It makes you wonder what all was going on there as far as a spiritual dynamic. Okay, holistic healing. All holistic healing bad? No. Some of the stuff's just really cool. The Chinese have been doing this for a long time and they've figured some stuff out. And some of the things are just helpful on some level. I've been to chiropractors and they've done wonderful things for my back periodically or my neck. So not all of that is bad. Now, if you go and lay down on a table and somebody says, I'm going to align your chakras, or I'm going to use vibration techniques, and have you ever seen this? They'll have people laying on tables, and let's imagine this is their skin. There are people over them just going, and you're paying money for that, or your insurance is.
They offer it at the hospital.
Do they really?
What's it called? Healing hands.
Yeah.
They do their hands just over you.
Yeah.
And when my
Yeah.
grandparents have been in, they offer it, and they're like, I don't know what they're doing.
No, thank you. Right. Getting away with a great scam, I think. Either that or something dark, but Hopefully not that. Now you'll see, even in the image I've got here, you see the person there with the colored pads all over them, and then various crystals and stones laid on those pads. So one of the features you're going to see frequently throughout the New Age ideologies is actually color is very significant. It's very important. The idea of light is very important for a lot of them. Vibration is very important for many of them. And some of them will say crystals, in fact, have power because they vibrate. Right? So kind of right in that. I mean, all matter is vibrating technically. It's all moving. All right. Definition. First thing you need to know about New Age. New Age is highly individualistic. Belief, it's a belief set that focuses or is loosely based on a few central points of focus. So when you think New Age, first of all, think the self is king. Uh-oh, went right past that. Get back there. There it is. Self is king. So you know how we said last week as we talked about Eastern pantheistic monism, we said Atman is Brahman. Atman is the soul. Brahman is the universe. And the idea is your soul is just one part of the whole universe. For the Easterners, they depict that like this. Imagine your soul is a drop. The drop gets poured out into the ocean. So what it's saying is, by Atman is Brahman, you are not important. You're just part of the greater whole. That's what the Easterners are saying. This is why I say this is a weird mix of existentialism and Eastern pantheistic monism, because they're saying Atman is Brahman, but they're not focusing on Brahman, the universe. They're focusing on Atman, you. In other words, you are everything. So instead of the universe making you unimportant, you are the one who gives the universe form and function. You are the most important thing in the whole cosmos. Sound a little heretical? All right. Whatever the nature of being, idea, matter, energy, or particle, the self is the prime reality. I am the center of the universe. Now, can you see why people might like this idea? You see why this would be appealing to people? Right. I am the center of the universe. John Lilly, New Age guru and drug advocate. This is something he had said about the cosmos, right? We, that is he and his other personal selves, are creating energy, matter, and life at the interface between the void and all known creation. We are facing into the known universe, creating it, filling it. I feel the power of the galaxy pouring through me. And I am the creation process itself, incredibly strong, incredibly powerful. I am one of the boys in the engine room, pumping creation from the void into the known universe, from the unknown to the known. I am pumping. Now, what's his idea about self there? It sounds loony, doesn't it? Lisa gave me the, yeah. It sounds loopy, sounds totally loopy. But this is one of the central ideas. Remember how we talked about solipsism in weeks past? Solipsism, the belief that I'm the only person that exists. New Agers actually kind of run on this sometimes. Their idea is they are making everything. I'm creating it. My mind, myself, is actually generating reality. So thanks for being here, figments of my imagination. All right. How do you know you're not making it up? How do you know that you're not creating reality right now? If somebody put that to you, that question to you, how do you know that you're not generating reality? Can you prove to me that you're not creating this whole thing as a brain? Your mind is generating all this. I'm not even really here. Everybody who's in this room, this church building, the Vietnam War, anything you can think of, that was a creation of your imagination. You made it. Can you prove to me that that's not true?
But wouldn't everybody have to?
Yeah, but that's the thing. There isn't an everybody. Melinda, you're the only person. And everybody else who's hearing me say that in the room right now? Yeah, anybody else who is in the room right now is a product of your imagination. This is not true, by the way.
He's not really a person.
But he's not. You made him up.
I made him up.
Yeah. Yeah. We said, Brian, go out.
So your senses go out the window in this?
Yeah, and
for the people, just my responsibility, I pinch myself for a pinch.
Right.
It's just somebody else.
Yeah, and they would say, you made that happen. You're generating that. Everything that happens to you, you stub your toe, you made that happen. It's part of how you made your world interesting.
So they're fun people to argue with.
Right. You can see how this gets frustrating really quickly, right?
If someone were asking me that question, I think that my response would be, if I was imagining this, I wouldn't imagine you asking me that stupid question.
And then they would say, well, that's because you're the byproduct of my imagination. But yeah. Chris, you were going to say?
No, I was gonna say, this
Yeah.
ideology really is rampant a lot. Like, you remember the film that exists about the Morgan Freeman played about the South African drug.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there's a poem he mentions there, and part of it is I am the master of my fate.
Right.
I am the captain of my soul. That's exactly.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say this, not every New Age ideology, and this is why I say this is hard to get a handle on, because as many weird ideas as you can think of, there's probably some advocate for it somewhere out there, as far as New Age ideologies. Not every New Ager thinks that they're the only person that exists. Many do. Many of them think that we all exist, but their mind is creating reality as much as yours is. So the fact that you do anything or say anything is partially their responsibility. They made it happen. And part of the reason you want to get out of self, you want to do this meditation where you can get out of your body, is so that you can control your environment. Deepak Chopra, famous guru, health and wealth guru. His idea is this: once you realize that all of the material universe is something we're making, you can really, if you program yourself right, you can generate money that will come your way. It's just going to start coming to you because you're controlling reality. You're making it. So see how powerful you are?
So do these people think that they're going to die? Because you can't argue that all these other people die, because then they'll say
Yeah.
they're whatever. So
Yeah. So
they leave the earth.
and they would appropriate a lot of Christian ideas in this regard too. There's going to be this other realm. They become the God that they're trying to be. They can maybe join the oneness of the cosmos, but it's not in a way that like they're diminished. They become more powerful in doing that. They tend to have an elevated idea of life after death. Many of them believe in reincarnation. Shirley MacLaine is a very famous neo-pagan, New Ager, and she believes she's lived numerous lives, and so they believe that they're just cycling through lives here on Earth. They might live on a distant planet or somewhere else in the cosmos. A lot of interesting, bizarre stuff that ties in. You're kind of seeing how broad this gets, I'm assuming.
They're taking the positive of the pantheistic.
Yeah. Yeah, they're taking the positive of everything. And they tend to do a huge mashup on the positive, and also like with their own flavors. Like, so, you know, each individual New Ager you meet's probably got dramatically different ideas from every other one. But that fits because who's creating reality? Yeah, if they're creating reality, then it would be fine if their reality bumped up against somebody else's. They could just overpower that person. And by the way, sorcery is prevalent in neo-paganism. And I don't mean like fake sorcery. I mean, there are people who believe that once they can tap into the cosmos, they can kill someone by moving against them, by becoming part of the one consciousness. It's not just getting money or wealth. You can use that darker side to actually go manipulate people or destroy them if you need to, because after all, you're generating a reality. And so Castaneda, one of the guys who we're going to reference tonight, is a sorcerer. Like, that's how he describes himself. He is a shaman and a sorcerer. Yeah, Chris.
We have a scientific meeting just down the street here.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's one right just off of Mayville City Center.
Yeah.
So this is right in our doorstep.
Present. Yeah.
In that on the coast.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the interesting things about this is every time I hear this or I'm talking about this, I'm always like, there's part of me that's just like, this is just whacked. Like, you know, who believes this stuff? But I am constantly running into people who adhere to these things. I had a student who came to me, he came to our youth group, and he'd been coming for a while, and he converted to Christianity from outside of Christianity. He brought in a book. He's like, check out this book that my mom had on the shelf. She thinks it's like really good, and she said that I should read it after I became a Christian. And it's about how to contact your angel. And so I opened it up and started reading it, and it's about like, so it's saying, okay, well, first of all, you need to do this. You need to touch this part of your head, and then this part of your head, and then this part of your head, in that order, and envision golden light emerging at each point. What you're going to do is you're going to begin asking for this spirit to reveal itself to you. And so it's a lot of this kind of like, and what you're going to get is you're going to get this secondary revelation. I'm like, this is crazy dangerous. But it was framed up in a way that it was being marketed to Christians as, you have a guardian angel, and wouldn't you like to know that angel and talk to that angel? Here's how to get in touch with your personal angel who can tell you things about life and about how you're supposed to operate. Right? Yeah.
You have children.
Yes.
You both are new agers, okay?
Yeah.
He's not a figure on my imagination.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
He's my reality.
Mhm.
We have children.
Yes.
Are they a figment of my imagination? Or they physically?
Yeah. Yep.
It costs me a lot of money and time and worry.
Oh, yeah. Melinda, have you ever seen the movie The Matrix?
No,
Oh,
I can't.
won't watch it. Won't watch it. Okay. That's it. It kind of, part of the reason it excelled as a movie is it dealt with this concept of reality versus created, like things that are generated in your mind. But the idea is it's very difficult to prove that anything outside of yourself exists. I know you.
You had a baby?
Sure. And the idea is,
You were there, we know this.
so what they would say to you, and this is how they challenge this idea is, have you ever had a dream that you really thought was real? Like, and in the middle of the dream, it just seemed like such a reality to you. It seemed completely real. And you woke up then and you found that it was not real. Well, the New Agers have this idea about this world that this is sort of like one big enormous dream. Your mind is fabricating it and making it up. And if you could just get out of your mind, if you could just wake up, which is how they would describe this expansion of mind, then you would realize that this was all dream, this is all imaginary, it's something you're creating, but you are something beyond this. And so now as you hear them talk about this should light you up a little bit, because they'll describe these experiences they have out of body, and they'll say things like this: the colors are more vivid than you can possibly imagine. You see dirt on the floor and it is like gold dust. When you see any color, it is bright, and you can taste it even through the air. And you can hear the colors. You can hear the sounds that you hear. You can taste those. And so they'll describe these features that just sound amazing. And they'll describe, yeah, yeah. Well, and that's how a lot of them arrive at this idea. But then there should be part of us as Christians that goes, God created this world, and this world is not ultimate reality. This world is passing away. This world is more like the dream. Sometimes as Christians, we think about heaven as that ethereal thing out there. No, this is the ethereal, gauzy, weird thing here. Heaven is more real than this will ever be. And so I think when we come to awaken in heaven, this will be like a weird dream to us, like a confused thing, if that makes sense. This is what a lot of the New Agers describe, which makes sense to me if they're being spoken to by demonic powers and presences. Because there's this, you have to understand what demons are trying to do is cause confusion and corruption, and take things that are sacred and profane them, and give people the wrong ideas and spread those wrong ideas. Like this is a goal of the adversary on earth. So creating reality right now. Here's Shirley MacLaine, brilliant person that she is. I had created everything I saw, heard, touched, smelled, tasted, everything I loved, hated, revered, abhorred, everything I responded to, or that responded to me. I was therefore responsible for all there was in my reality. If that was true, then I was everything. I was my own universe. Did that also mean that I had created God, and I had created life and death? Now, to hear this, most of us are like, well, that's nuts. But anybody who is outside of Christ and is searching for meaning or purpose or value hears something like that, and a part of them, that dark part of them that wants to be God, says, yes. Could it be that I made up God? Now, again, on this side of Christianity, we hear that as like, that is so blasphemous. Like the idea that you generated God, ugh. You get uncomfortable even thinking about it, but you can see where would be the adversary's playground. I mean, he would love to infuse this idea in people. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
If they believe that they create everything in their own imagination,
Mhm.
then when something bad happens,
Yeah.
what's their response? I mean, they create bad
Mhm.
happens, so does that mean that they're a failure?
They have to ask themselves the question, I wonder why I did this to myself. So for instance, during the 60s, there were people who were New Age gurus who were like, late 60s, early 70s. I wonder why I made the Vietnam War happen. Like, I wonder what it is that I'm supposed to learn from that, right? And so that's the mentality. And again, if you think you're God, if you think you're creating reality, then you have to ask yourself these questions. If I stubbed my toe this morning, I have to go, I wonder what I needed to know that I'm trying to tell myself, right?
But we also, as Christians, sometimes ask that same question of why God. So
Sure. Yeah.
pulling some,
It's just some of the same ideas that we would have about God, but instead of asking it about an all-powerful deity outside of myself,
yeah.
I'm asking it about myself,
And
right?
I
Yeah.
found myself thinking when you're talking about, worrying about oneself, is that we're kind of called in to leave our children, family,
Yeah.
to follow God, basically. So
Yeah.
it is interesting how
Yeah.
stuff's grabbed here and there.
Yeah. Well, and there is a level of devotion that says it rises above anything else. Devotion to God rises above anything else. This is an individual where devotion to self rises above anything else. And you should hear echoes of the garden with Adam and Eve in the midst of this. You can become like God, right? Okay. John Lilly, New Age guru and drug advocate. Why not enjoy bliss and ecstasy while still a passenger in the body? Oh, hang on just a second. I got to introduce this one. Upon reaching the inner space, this cosmos that is within him. It's okay if you don't understand. I don't think he understands. Upon reaching the inner space that Lilly called +3, the fullest, deepest penetration of reality, he becomes God, the universe and its maker, and he pronounces from that vantage, why not enjoy bliss and ecstasy while still a passenger in the body on this spacecraft? The transport company has a few rules. Who's the transport company and what are the rules? In his mind, that would be the earth and physics, probably, like what you would normally call reality. It has a few rules, but it may be that we dream up the company and its rules too. All and everything that one can imagine exists. Yeah, actually, a lot of these people were on drugs as they compiled a lot of these things. And beyond, it's actually a good question, because you'll hear some of this and you'll be like, that's an interesting trip. Like I can see how this was put together. But they're also doing like that spontaneous writing during a lot of these things. They're getting specific revelations. And they're talking to spirit creatures a lot. Like this is like, you've heard my spirit animal. Right? The idea is I have this certain creature that appears to me and it tells me what to do and it talks to me. It's my guide, my spirit guide. Yeah. She tells me what to do. All right. The cosmos, while unified in the self, all right, so all the cosmos is somehow within me, is manifested in 2 or more dimensions. You have the visible universe and the invisible universe. The invisible universe we'll call the mind at large. They describe this in many different ways. It's only accessible through altered states of consciousness. Okay, what do we mean by an altered state of consciousness? Something made up. Drugs is one of the ways. So drugs is an altered state of consciousness. Transcendental meditation. If I can have an out-of-the-body experience, that would be an altered state of consciousness. Sensory deprivation, maybe meditation, Zen meditation or something like that might be an altered state of consciousness. It has to be me moving beyond myself, which they believe is fully possible because you're generating the universe and in touch with the universe. All right, so looking for that altered state of consciousness. So you've got the visible universe, and that's stubborn. But once you realize you're bigger than that, you can begin acting on that in ways that are powerful. Aldous Huxley, another drug advocate. Also an advocate of the new consciousness. New consciousness is a way to describe mind at large, or touching the mind at large, right? You're coming into this new understanding of reality. He says of the mind that it has full access at any time to every truth in the whole cosmos. In other words, you know everything if you have access to it. It's all there. All of history, all of space-time, all of the future, you have access to it right now. But he talks about the brain as a reducing valve. It exists in order to filter out those things which are at the moment not useful. All right. So in other words, all knowledge of all space-time and history is available to you, but your brain is just helping you to stay like normal right now, because it would be so confusing to experience all knowledge all at once, wouldn't it? All of time all at once. Wouldn't that be weird? All right. So yeah.
That's the end of one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Thanks to the crystal skulls.
Oh, really? I never saw the Crystal Skull. That was the one I was told not to watch. They just said it was dumb. Somebody told me it was stupid, and I never watched it.
Dumb, but it was, again,
Yeah.
the villain
Mhm.
is seeking all this knowledge.
Yeah.
So all these alien skulls start putting all this all knowledge into her.
Okay.
And she kind of blows up. And she can't stand all the pressure. So it's kind of falling. I mean, it's
Yeah.
funny you brought that up.
Mhm.
And it was stupid, but
Yeah.
it is this ideology.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a possibility that our brain is a reducing valve, in a manner of speaking. It could be that your spirit, the brain as a physical entity, it could be that your spirit knows greatly beyond what the brain can experience or know. And so spiritually speaking, it could be the case that we are much more grand, much bigger than this. If your spirit is interacting with God, do you think it is greater than what your mind can handle? Okay. So most people think of the brain as like a machine that produces thought. There is another version of the brain, and I feel this is pretty compelling, that the brain is basically a processor. So it is not memory storage. It is the thing that processes, and we don't know where it's processing from. It's possible the spirit is actually the instigator of thought.
A lot of these things kind of hint
Mhm.
at maybe true, but
Yeah.
remember Nate's lake trout?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that idea of we are capable of, God really did put a reducer on it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we look at the capabilities of Adam and Eve
Yeah.
and what we can experience now, there must be some kind of a governor on how fast we can go.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's why God said to stay away from witchcraft.
Yeah. It does not seem reasonable to me that we would be forbidden from pursuing sorcery if that were not possible.
Yeah.
I
believe that.
Yeah. So the idea that God would say, don't try to speak to the dead, don't engage in sorcery, I think is meant to keep us largely from the power of the demonic, spiritual realm. Yeah.
The reason is that it's the Adam and Eve thing.
Yeah.
The guys I knew that were warlocks or were the sorcery thing had no room for God because they were God. They could levitate.
Sure.
They could do. And so the idea that God put parameters on us because we would want to step outside our bounds and we would need him or something. It's really kind of an interesting, the book is pretty bizarre.
Yeah. I think we should expect that a group that is constantly opening itself up to demonic power and presence will probably find some interesting and deep truths that maybe we have not accessed about the human entity, because demons would know. And so it would not be surprising that some of these things actually parallel the reality, the spiritual reality that many of us have not known. But the fact that demons are panning it out means that it would be very bad for the whole human enterprise. Chris, were you going to say something? Go ahead, Mike.
But you guys are exactly right. That possibility is probably there because biblical example is the witch at Endor.
Yeah.
She was able to do something that nobody else could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So
yeah.
Such a shock.
It did shock.
She did freak
so
her out.
yeah.
But when I hear these things, that these people are I'm thinking through drugs, which,
Mhm.
pharmakia is
Yeah.
devil thing, and anyway. Through this, they may have tapped into something that we haven't experienced, we don't know.
Yep.
They come up with all these, and we look at it like it's weird, but it's something that's forbidden, it looks like.
Yeah.
To me.
Well,
It looks like something that don't go there because it'll hurt you.
well, wait till you hear some of where this all goes. I'm
Sorry.
no, I'm giving you the basic synopsis of what they're teaching and saying, but we're going to start digging deeper into this to look at what's behind the scenes. It gets pretty funky. Chris.
We know that they can create a machine to trap that people. We could go into.
Yeah.
We could. Now, we haven't had that ability.
Right.
I don't believe God's not going to give us that.
Sure.
Because that would, just.
Yeah.
But we know that's possible. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't practice sorcery.
Yep. A theoretic possibility, but mass increases and so the requirements for energy get exponentially higher the faster you go. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Is there any way to refute experience? This is a difficult question. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
It's not something.
Exactly. Now, we as Christians believe that. Here's the problem. If I am talking to if I'm talking to a naturalist, the naturalist and I will start arguing about the nature of reality and ultimate reality. We're going to have an argument about whether or not something exists beyond the physical realm. If I'm talking to an existentialist, we're going to have an argument about reality. We're going to determine whether or not there is meaning or purpose, whether or not naturalism is true, whether or not there might be a God. We have a meaningful discussion. If I'm talking to a deist, we're going to meet on the same field of ideological battle. If I talk to a pantheistic monist, we still have tons of disagreements, but we have some idea that there is a physical reality in the world and we're not making it. If I talk to a New Age spiritualist, their idea, their version of reality is that we can have completely contradictory views of everything. And their experience is the thing that trumps everything else that's out there. So if you believe that you're causing your reality, you're bringing it about, and I'm trying to argue against that, it's difficult for me to go, you know what, that spirit animal who talked to you is probably a demon. And they'll say, well, I wonder why you're telling me that. I mean, for them, it doesn't matter that you even said that. Like for them, it doesn't even fit with their paradigm because they just made you say that. Like they're producing that thought themselves so that they can wrestle with something. But you see how this is a horrible trap the adversaries produced here for people. Because once somebody's really involved in this, it is difficult to extract them. You almost have to ask the Lord, I think, that they have a very bad experience, which seems to happen a lot. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay. This is Carlos Castaneda. This is the guy I was talking about who is a sorcerer and a shaman, a New Age ideology fellow. I think he's dead by now. This is an image, the image that's drawn here is an image of one of his out-of-body experiences. He went out in the desert. Where do we see demons going when they're cast out? Okay, now just desert as a concept. I want you to think about desert as a concept because we're going to revisit this a couple times. He went out to the desert because this is where shamans told him if he wanted to have spirit creatures lead and guide him and take control of him, that's where you go. All right, so he'd go out to the desert and he had a spirit animal that was a luminous coyote. It was like his famous spirit director. It told him what to do, how to do it, told him deep truths about the universe. Here's what he says. The coyote was fluid, liquid, luminous being. Its luminosity was dazzling. Then somewhat later, I saw the lines of the world. I actually perceived the most extraordinary profusion of fluorescent white lines which crisscrossed everything around me. Ley lines is what they're called. And the idea is I could see these lines of power that move through the world and I could perceive them physically. He got all sorts of direction from that particular spirit animal, by the way. It gave him power. All right. The core experiences of New Age is cosmic consciousness. This is a state in which the ordinary categories of space, time, and morality disappear. When you achieve cosmic consciousness, there is no right or wrong. There is no up or down, no width, no depth, no height. Time has no meaning. You can go forward and backward to the end and the beginning. You can go across space and time. Sounds pretty fun, doesn't it? Sounds pretty vague. All right, the core of, oh, hang on, I just did that one. This is seen as a necessary and inevitable part of evolution. We will transcend our physical forms. Are you guys ready for the age of Aquarius? You heard that before? Yeah, you've heard the song. The age of Aquarius was the idea that we were entering a new age of human existence where humans would transcend our evolutionary forms, that we would become something greater. The idea was evolution had moved us up to this point. This is what they say. But now we're ready to move beyond that because now we are spirit creatures that are about to advance beyond it. It's the age of Aquarius, a whole new time in history where we will become these spirit creatures. Everybody sings and dances. Marilyn Ferguson, author of The Aquarian Conspiracy. There are so many people in this society now who are living at a kind of evolutionary edge, who've gone beyond normal and have begun to, or have experimented with, explored, and are beginning to use our full human capacities. We're going to become something else. People were really convinced that drugs were going to bring this about. And most of those people burnt out and died. So that didn't work out so much, but we're trying to innovate new ways to get to that evolutionary jump. Number 4, physical death is not an end of itself. A cosmically conscious being does not fear death, understanding all things and what is beyond. You see, if you're a New Age practitioner, you don't have to be afraid of death. You've already experienced the oneness of the cosmos. What do you have to fear? That sound like they're peddling something that doesn't belong to them? Yeah, this is the adversary going, hey, you too, you can experience life just like the Christians do. You don't have to be afraid of dying. All right, 3 distinct attitudes, 3 major divisions in New Age ideologies. 3 categories of thought. Number 1, the occultic New Age ideologies. Occultic? Satanic. Yeah, I mean, these are the practitioners, Wiccan practitioners. A lot of witchcraft falls into this category. You have dark magic practitioners, but this is an occultic experience. A lot of what we call neo-paganism. Does anybody know what I mean by neo-paganism? Neo just means new. Paganism. It's all that other stuff that was going on. All the deities, Zeus, Athena, any of the Egyptian deities, Horus, whatever you have.
So the new goddess worship, you hear about something like
Uh-huh.
goddess and all that.
Yeah.
That is being new. It's
Yes.
new now.
Yeah, Gaia is the idea of the spirit of Earth, and so you worship Mother Earth as a spirit. There's a weird idea behind a lot of this stuff. Part of the idea of, again, the New Agers is if I imagine it, it becomes real. So if I believe that Athena is real and I want to worship Athena, to me she becomes, I created her. Right? So she exists now because I need her to exist.
Why would you worship something you created?
Isn't that interesting? Well, because you're God essentially in this cosmos, right? And so if you think you need it, then you're making it. This has the person as being like the center of the universe. This person believes they are God in a sense. And so everything they do, say, experience, they're generating it themselves. So you have this occultic practice. They practice weird stuff. How are we doing on time, by the way, guys? Anybody have the time? Okay, I gotta get moving. Psychedelic version, dropping acid, LSD, anything you can do to create intensive mind disjunction. All right, so one of the ways they do this is they'll practice Zen Buddhism too. Have you guys ever heard of Zazen or Zen Buddhism? All right, Zen Buddhism, if you've ever seen somebody saying like, all right, they do that in the East, in India and stuff, but they also do it in Zen Buddhist practices. Now, what's interesting about this is if you do that long enough and you make that sound, you're actually kind of vibrating your head a little bit and you're making the same noise. You're triggering the same set of neural pathways over and over again in your brain. And so Zen Buddhists will practice this like 16 hours a day. They'll kneel down and they just sit and make that sound. and they have a helper who walks around with what looks like a cricket bat. If they start nodding off, he helps them. All right, so wakes them up, and then they just keep practicing. There's and eventually what happens is they have kind of a weird snap. They get all messed up. So they reach enlightenment. You know how you can tell? They do weird things or say weird things. Like they'll jump up, and here's an example. A guy runs into the headmaster's office and drops his trouser or hoists his robe and urinates on a statue of the Buddha. And the headmaster says, this one has reached enlightenment. Now, what's happening is that you can do this, and I used to tell high schoolers this, maybe I shouldn't have, but you can actually create a high artificially in yourself by making the same noise over and over again. You can generate that feeling. You can generate a bizarre feeling. If you were to just say giraffe over and over again, you would eventually, the sounds would be weird. Giraffe, 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 and you hear Rajaf, Rajaf, and it would start sounding odd to you. Have you ever had that? What's happening is you're triggering the same set of neural pathways over and over and over again. And eventually your brain's like, what are we doing? Like it just doesn't get it, and it's not receiving it anymore. Another way you can experiment with that is if you actually press in on the side of your eyes a little bit. Your eye is constantly doing this. I don't know if you knew that or not. It's constantly moving back and forth. Your brain processes it out. But if it's not moving back and forth, you're getting the same receptors triggered over and over again, and it will actually black out. So if you just hold the side of your eye for a second, you'll see it just goes dark, and then you let go and it lightens up again. Oh, I got this from all sorts of different venues. Not necessarily from practicing. I can't remember the neural pathways thing where I got all that. I teach that. I use that as part of my counseling stuff, because you actually create habits. You create chemical changes in your brain by the way you think over and over again. So people who think in a certain way and with certain patterns, it's like a light switch. It's been flipped on and off over and over again. It gets really loose and easy to flip. And like if you have anxiety issues and you constantly go to anxiety, what started out as a novelty becomes your default. And pretty soon you can't stop yourself from doing it. And even if there's nothing to be anxious about, you start grabbing for things to be anxious about and trying to find things to be anxious about. The reason is you've trained your mind to do that. You've basically made that your pattern. Same thing with lust issues with guys. So a lot of good counseling material there. All right. Conceptual relativist. You know what a relativist is? True for you, not necessarily true for me. True for me, not true for you. Yeah. A conceptual relativist is the person who believes that we're all making it up and my reality could be completely different than yours and we would never know. All right. Occultic version. Things perceived by the conscious self are real, but a reality external and apart from the one perceiving them. There are real spiritual creatures. There are gods, there are angels, there are demons out there, and I need to make use of them. That's the occultic version of New Age ideologies, right? I can capture demons, I can harness them, I can make use of them. There are angelic powers out there. And what Christianity doesn't quite know is that I can accommodate angels and make use of them. Still me having power over all these things. Shirley MacLaine, her higher self, is a person in the form of a very tall, overpoweringly confident, almost androgynous human being. She has out-of-the-body experiences where she sees her true self, and that's what she looks like. Carlos Castaneda encounters allies or helpers, guardians, and entities of the night. They direct him and tell him what to do and where to go. They are powerful. They give him power. That's the occultic version. John Lilly meets two guardians who instruct him on how to make the most out of his life. These guardians showing up and helping you. Psychedelic version, all things are projections of the conscious self. Those things you see aren't real, you made them. Okay, so that's the created version. And the conceptual relativist version, all models of consciousness and the minds that pursue them are equally valid experiential realities. Every one of us is making up our own thing. If you believe there is a God, that works for you. If I believe there's not a God, that works for me. Yeah. Where do they get the rules for this? Satan. Yeah. There's no real authorities. There's no book that tells you what to do. And so what you do is, this is the way a lot of just people in general function. It's the old country buffet version of religiosity and worldviews. You go and you take the things you want and you leave the things you don't want. And so they'll appropriate things from Christianity. I like the Christian ethic about life, and I like the Christian ethic about heaven. I'll take kind of these ideas and I'll make use of them. I'm not big on the idea of hell, so we're just going to set that aside. I like Buddhism and meditation. That makes me feel good. I like yoga from Hinduism. And so you just kind of grab the stuff you want, you leave the stuff you don't want, and you mash it all together. And you feel good because people write books about this, and Oprah has these people on her show, right? So you can feel good because Oprah wouldn't lie to you. She's really good. She's really nice. Oh, come on. Oprah has done a tremendous amount to advance bad ideas in our culture. And I cannot say enough. Even if you enjoy Oprah as a person and how she interacts with people, I cannot tell you enough how much bad she has done, particularly for women in this whole society, in terms of just dishing up bad idea after bad idea after bad idea. And usually her biggest, accommodations are made for people in New Age ideology, but she also will entertain Christians like Rob Bell, who are, he's a super liberal emergent church guy who is just off the deep end in theology. Oh no, I wouldn't put him in the category of Christian. Yeah, no. If I said that, that was by mistake. She would call him a Christian. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what's the huge draw to New Age ideologies? Why do people like it? You're your own God. Making it up yourself. You're doing your own thing. You are powerful. You can acquire power. You can chase it. And that's good if you want it to be. It's pretty nice. And by the way, none of that naturalism stuff, I don't have to worry about life not having meaning, because it does, because I'm making it up. And I'm not making it up like an existentialist makes it up. I'm making it up because I'm a spiritual creature and there is this massive spiritual reality. And I'm tapping into it. I have power over it. That's exciting. What's also exciting is some people get some really interesting results out of this stuff. So if you're doing tarot card readings and you're engaging in weird meditation, you're probably going to have some weird experiences periodically. And that will reward you. That'll help remind you that what you're doing is real and it matters.
I say something about the draw, I think in the 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
Is so many young people, when we were that age, so many young people came out of Christian backgrounds.
Yeah.
Where they didn't see anything to challenge them. They didn't see power.
Yep.
It was just, I mean.
There was a lot of dead Christianity, right?
Yeah. And there were people going to church and being great people and ministering to each other, but what a lot of us saw as we came out was just nothing to hold people there. They were looking for power, challenge, something to really believe in, and something different. And so they went into drug culture, and then they went into Satanism and the occult and the New Age.
Yeah.
And then that's why then when the Jesus movement came around in the early 70s, hey, get high on Jesus.
Yeah, people.
I mean, that was a big thing. Hey, I can tell you get high on Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh no, I tried that. No, you don't understand. You really can't. Everybody was like, that became a whole ideology in itself.
Yeah.
Is the Jesus movement being high on Jesus? So
yeah.
A lot of them swung to that.
Well, and people discovered the radical nature of Christianity, or rediscovered the radical nature of Christianity, right? That this is countercultural. This is
anything about radical Christianity. We hadn't heard anything about spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, we both grew up in the church every week of our lives and never heard anything about spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
There was a spirit world out there that you might have to encounter
and
battle. And so it was all seeking power and meaning and something to really believe in.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the Lord has a good way of kind of turning the tables. I'm sure the adversary probably thought, this is great. I'm corrupting all these youths and drawing them away from the church. And then you have a version of Christianity that begins to emerge that is far more hardcore. And I think that happens over and over again with the adversary. He thinks he's got a good thing going, and God brings up a new crop of people who are powerful. All right. Who's on the throne in this religion or this ideology? Well, you are. You're making it all up. You're creating it. What from a Christian vantage point is happening?
First Amendment, once again.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not have no other gods before me.
All right. And so, and you have in this situation, who's sitting on the throne? Yeah, you are, right? And you're also seeking out these other spirit entities. You're seeking out power from sorcery. You're seeking out engagements with demonic powers. You're trying to expand your mind and control the cosmos. You're actually trying to gain God power as a human being. It's not just take the fruit and become like God. It's I need to take that throne. I need that throne. All right. Aldous Huxley. So there's a series of we'll read through this just a moment. Understand this. Most of what you're getting in the New Age books are what they would call, they're kind of their good experiences. But these guys have what they call bad trips or bummers. And oftentimes, and it's not just with drug issues, it's not just a drug situation. Sometimes they're in meditation and bad things happen and weird things happen. And they see things that very much upset or disturb them. Listen to this account from Aldous Huxley. Confronted by a chair, which looked at the last judgment, or to be more accurate, like a last judgment, which after a long time and with considerable difficulty, I recognized as a chair. Right. So there's this, I'm seeing this judgment, and after a while, he's like, it's a big throne. It's a giant chair that's before me. I found myself all at once on the brink of panic. This, I suddenly felt, was going too far, even though the going was into intense beauty, deeper significance. The fear, as I analyze it in retrospect, was of being overwhelmed, of disintegrated under a pressure of reality greater than mind, accustomed to the living most of the time in a cozy world of symbols could possibly bear. Now, what he's describing, what does that sound like to you? It sounds like he got an appearance at judgment and he was overwhelmed with what he saw. He described this as a major bummer. It was something that caused him to want to not do this for a while. It was very upsetting. He eventually came to terms with it and began doing things again. But here's just a question for you. Is the spirit temporal or is the spirit non-time? I suspect probably non-time. Is it possible that his spirit got a little glance at the throne of judgment for a second there and he freaked out? Because that's what he did. A little disturbing. All right. A lot of these bad trips happen often. And a lot of these people who make deals and have power, you guys have all probably heard the stories of the occult. Some of you might even have experiences with the occult. But the whole idea that we're forbidden from making pacts with other entities or seeking out power that goes beyond our physical realm, or trying to speak with the dead or doing things like that, is God's attempt to stifle our interaction with dangerous spiritual forces. This group actively pursues and seeks out dangerous spiritual forces. Now, in the end here, I want to mention neo-paganism and its emergence in our culture. New Age ideologies are dangerous. Neo-paganism is on the spiking rise. It has become huge in the last decades. Have you guys ever heard of the Burning Man Festival? Okay, you see this picture in the central bottom? That's the Burning Man Festival taken as an aerial view, forming this elaborate, huge crescent. What you're seeing there are individual tents, cars, millions of people pouring out into the desert, spending the week in debauchery, open orgies, like open air orgies happening. They have regions where you curse God. So like they actually have like an open mic area where you can come in and level your heaviest curses against God. There's all sorts of pagan practices going on constantly. They're engaging in ritual imitation sacrifice, a lot of summoning and things. It is about as dark as you can possibly imagine. And guess who else is there? Microsoft and Apple and most of the major cultural movers and shakers. Most of Silicon Valley has representation out there to deal with people and interact with people. Really? Man, that's dark. That would be difficult because I imagine you're not just getting a lot of kickback, but I imagine you've got some spiritual forces you're working against. Remember what we said about deserts. Desert places are where demons go when they're cast out. And they seem to have an affinity for desert places. And remember, and this is biblical theme in general. Remember when the scapegoat was taken? Where was it loosed? Into the desert. It was turned loose to Azazel to be destroyed in the desert. It was set loose so that demons could have it. All right, and that was the idea. And that is, by the way, the goat that is representative of those who die outside of Christ. They're the ones who are set loose and sent out to be taken by whatever else is out there. Jesus was tempted in the wilderness, in the desert. Early Christians used to make a practice of going into the wilderness after conversion to grapple in the same way Jesus did, to have this experience where they wrestled with Satan in a sense. And the idea was that is the place, the desert place is the place where the demons dwell. Why on earth would millions of people go sit in a desert for a week and have orgies?
Trying to think of the engineering layout.
Yeah. I imagine it's a lot. Neo-paganism is going to invoke deities and the power of different deities. You might have heard of the shrine to what is it? What's the name of it? It's one of the Baals, I think. I'm trying to remember what it's called. There's a shrine that has toured our country, going from place to place and being put on display. I'm trying to remember the name of it's not Moloch, it's Baphomet. A shrine to Baphomet that's toured the country. It's a big statue of this demon that people are coming out to see and worship. And it's made appearances at most of the state capitals as it's gone on tour around the country so that people could come observe it, because religious freedom. And so that's out there. They've got all these different deities that are invoked and made use of and worshipped. You see in the lower left here, that is modern pagan practices. These are an occultists. These are witches, modern witches or warlocks who gather and have their summonings and all of that fun stuff. On the right, see that enormous effigy of a man on fire? That's why they call it Burning Man. Every year, the culmination of the event is to sacrifice a man in effigy on fire. And I just see the adversary in this, like just laughing at human beings. This is you. This is what you're going to be. You will be consumed in the hellfires. All right, candle magic. By the way, if you see magic with a K on the end of it like that, that's because that's a person who believes that their magic is not illusion. Their magic is real. So you'll occasionally see a bumper sticker that says magic happens, spelled with a K at the end like that. They're telling you that they're involved in witchcraft. Had a former student who came to us as a Wiccan, ended up going to Bible college. She works with churches now, became a phenomenal Christian. But she'll say, if you go to the Renaissance Festival and you're wearing your, what's the pentagram, wearing the pentagram with the circle around it, and you're just moving through the Rennie Festival, you're going to get invited to the back to look at the real stuff. And so apparently they sell to magic users who are there practicing, and they make overtures to them. She was, by the way, a third generation witch. Anyway, cool gal. Got a really cool testimony. Jen.
You know that witchcraft is now a recognized religion.
Yeah.
It has its own Bible.
Yeah.
It's scholastic. The people that do has whole programs now.
Yeah.
To use in junior high on up.
Yep.
To make potions, to cast spells, and all this stuff is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's promoted by the National Theater Association.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it. My wife opted out of the union this past year because we are now a state that allows you to do that. Finally not paying dues to those knuckleheads.
I just signed an order saying can't opt out of it.
Well, I wonder what they're going to do with her. Because she might be grandfathered in because like she opted out now. So
It's like two of us.
yeah.
You don't have to pay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, Jenny's story, this is just an interesting one. Let me just relay this to you really quickly. Chad McIntosh, one of my students, was teaching philosophy club at their school. And so he was doing our World Views series, and they came to neo-paganism. And so he was doing neo-paganism. So he was using my materials in there, and she heard that they were doing that as a witch. So she wanted to come hear what they said. And so in the context of that, she's listening and she's getting more and more mad. So she starts yelling at them. She's angry. She starts crying. Eventually she runs out of the room. And so Chad shows up to me, my student. He goes, I don't know what happened. I totally blew it. He's like, it was just, I don't know if I was just not gentle enough, but like it just really upset her, but it stuck with her. And so she's like, let's see what his youth group says. So she started showing up and she ended up coming to Christ. It's a really cool scenario. But yeah, she's got a cool testimony, and she speaks to kids specifically on this issue because she's got experience. I mean, it's part of her backdrop. Candle magic and all that fun stuff. Yes, Melinda.
Oh, I was just, what would be the draw to be a, to be a,
Yeah.
a witch,
Yeah.
warlock?
Yeah.
Do they say, would your friend know what, I mean, her generationally, she had probably.
Sure.
But what?
Yeah.
What would be the draw? Why would you want to do that?
Right. So from their perspective, again, if God is just one concept about this universe, but from their perspective, there is a spiritual reality, and they're tapped into it. They're very spiritual people. You ever hear people describe themselves that way? I'm a very spiritual person. Right, what they're saying is, I believe there's something beyond this physical flesh that exists, and I pay attention to that. I'm doing something with that. Christians describe themselves that way sometimes. I'm a very spiritual person. That means nothing, right? If any, I mean, everybody is a spiritual person. It's like saying, I'm a flesh person. Yeah, right? You and everybody else who's around, right? We have spirits, but what they're doing is they're trying to make their spirits more powerful. They are pacting with different creatures and entities. They believe that they have the power to tap into this universal consciousness and gain power that way, or understand new things. And so part of the way they view us is like we're incredibly ignorant. We're like part of this backwards one God religion, but their mind is expanded. They understand so much more than we do, right? Because they know that there's all these different spiritual realities and that they're making it up. But you ignorant Christians think that there's only one way to salvation and Jesus is it.
That would almost sound virtuous, except when you're into that, it's not only power.
Yeah.
But, and they are just ridicule Christians.
Right.
It's not only power, but I want power with her.
Yep.
I want power with him.
Yep.
So it's not Jesus told us we have to be the least, be the
Yep.
greatest. And over there, it's like, I'm going to dominate everybody. So you're doing
Oh yeah.
anything you can.
Yeah.
To crawl over everybody else and get to the top.
Absolutely. This is not like a generous, fun, we're all on the same page type ideology. When it comes right down to it, and by the way, a lot of their religious, like particularly the occultic practices, are dominance type practices. So a lot of the rituals they engage in are even like sexual dominance type rituals. So it's pretty dark stuff. But they'll do mimic sacrifices and other things along those lines. It's like a normative part of the way they engage. No, it doesn't. Yeah, power. And I think we take it for granted, especially if you've been in the church for a while and been a part of a Christian culture. You just assume that, like, well, most human beings are basically good, right? I mean, I feel certain ways about human beings, and I try to be kind and generous and compassionate, but that's not the case. I mean, most human beings don't function that way. Like, people outside of the church, you might think they're basically like me. That's not really the case. In fact, the further somebody has been from Christ, the longer they have been apart from Christ, the more dark generally that person is, functions, and thinks. People will do some vile things given the opportunity. All right, questions, comments, rude remarks about New Age ideologies?
I still think it's really important to teach our kids about the spirit world.
Yeah.
Because I remember my cousins who were Christians.
Yeah.
Had doing tarot cards, and we all sat around and did tarot cards.
Yeah.
And then when we would all play with
Ouija boards.
And the spirit tell me this and that and the other. And you're calling on spirits.
Yeah.
It's not playtime. It is not a fun thing. We
Right.
really still need to teach our kids
Absolutely.
And I remember we had a seance. We
Yeah.
were all part of seances, and it was like, I didn't know anything was wrong with doing that.
Right.
And it was like, we had not been taught anything. And I think sometimes we skip over those parts of the Bible because our kids are Christians and they want to do that.
Mhm.
Maybe not. We're one generation away from not knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
Not knowing that's wrong.
Yes.
And it all started with horoscopes. Horoscopes became so big
Mhm.
back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my first, kind of thing about that. I didn't think with my horoscope every day in the paper and
Yeah.
and then you just kind of you're not taught. You still have to teach your kids.
Yeah. Judy's saying that we need to be teaching our kids and kind of elaborating with regard to the danger of trying to invoke spiritual powers and authorities. No, but they're recording it, so this is going out. So, yeah. I'm just trying to explain. Ben's just talking to himself up there. let him go. We'll be done soon.
It's making his own reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You've been,
Yeah, Chris.
to Judy's point, we really teach scripture.
Yeah.
Sufficiency.
Yep.
We want the church going out on the inerrancy. We also out on sufficiency.
Yeah.
And that's something that
Mm.
they need to know. The Bible is sufficient.
Yeah.
It does address these things, and they know that, and they know what they believe is going to help them when they get these reviews, because that's where
Yeah.
where the spiritual power is. Again, I know there's that
Yeah.
real spiritual word that we're dedicated to is world, attitudes.
Absolutely.
Church faith. So if we don't, if you don't have good sufficiency of scripture, good doctrine of scripture.
Yeah.
You're really gonna just
Yeah, Chris is saying that we need to recover a sufficiency of the scriptures and understanding the scriptures are enough. And this is, I think, part of the problem with why the church wasn't addressing this, because the church was part of the modernist movement. It was falling prey to naturalism and a lot of the naturalist ideologies and going, we can't talk about spiritual things. People will think we're backwards bumpkins. Those things are absurd. Let's just focus on Jesus and who he was and his love. We're not going to talk about the miraculous. We're certainly not going to talk about the danger of other spirituals or spiritual entities or wicked spirits, but and disregarding it, not talking about what the scriptures said. Again, the sufficiency of scripture, that it has what we need to contend with this. Instead, we set that aside, and the adversary went, okay, guards down, let's go, and just came in and plowed through the church. Yeah. Yeah.
The Baha'i religion.
Yeah.
We have a friend who used to be part of this church who's now heavily in the Baha'i religion.
Mhm.
And Jesus was one of many messengers. Is
Yeah.
that part of
Yeah.
this? Where would that fit in?
New Age ideologies would incorporate the same idea that Jesus was another messenger. By the way, there are New Age ideologies that hold that Jesus was like a pot advocate, that Jesus was about psychedelic drugs, and a lot of what we're seeing, particularly in the book of Revelation, are psychedelic trips. Baha'i is a more recent religious ideology, Persian ideology. I think they claim one miracle. And that miracle was somebody was about to get hung, or somebody was hanging from a rope, and they were to be shot while they're on the rope, and the rope got shot instead of the person. That was a miracle.
So lastly, do you cover polytheism, or is that part of
Eastern pantheistic monism. Polytheism fits in here, by the way. Polytheism, the idea of many gods, fits this paradigm, because this paradigm believes that there are many gods. We've created them over time. And this is, again, part of neo-paganism, is the idea of going, we need to worship Thor and Odin again, because if we do that, then they'll regain power. And so you have these people who are revivalists, and this is happening particularly in nationalities. By the way, Hitler would have loved a lot of these ideas, because the Germanic mindset was that we need to recapture some of the old mythology, the old mythos of Germany, so that we can be a more cruel people and have kind of our old bloodthirst that we used to have. He had several of his higher ranking officials who were advocates for a lot of the ancient religions. Anyway, now that we've talked about Hitler, I guess we're ready to be done.
It's amazing that you were talking about worship Thor.
Yeah.
All these movies that are coming out.
Yeah.
with Greek gods being
Yeah.
personified again.
Yeah.
And looks like it's almost acceptable.
Yeah.
So Hollywood's falling right into this.
Well, Hollywood paves the way for every next major travesty that we go through as a human enterprise, because that's where the adversary is at work. But you think about how we've softened up to this idea. Like, probably if there were a Thor movie out, and I've liked the Thor movies, I've really enjoyed them. But if there were a Thor movie out when I was in high school or junior high, probably a lot of the Christian community would have gone, wait a second here, not comfortable with this. Or even the Thor comics early on, you would think maybe that people would react to it. But we kind of soften ourselves up to certain things. The idea that, oh, that's just a ridiculous, ancient deity that nobody believes in anymore. Well, and the adversary goes, or let's just revive it and get everybody softened up to the idea that there are these other superhuman beings or things that are out there. So I said, I'm wary of all the religious ideologies that are out there. I'm more wary that the adversary is going to make inroads through this, like real, like spiritual power presence type scenarios through this, than any of the other ideologies. And that's why, like, New Age, if you had asked me about 15 years ago, before like Burning Man really started creeping up, or 20 years ago, I'd have been like, New Age is on the decline. Like, we're not even gonna have to worry about talking about this in another 10 years. But it is not. It is ratcheted up and ratcheted up, and especially with the emergence of a lot of the neo-pagan ideas. I think this represents a very real spiritual danger in years to come.
It's okay for the comic books that you was about to Steve Reed.
Yeah. Weren't allowed to read those comics.
Have you heard of the Christian tarot cards?
Christian tarot cards? No.
This is actually, that is a good point. The Bethel Church is really big into this kind of stuff. And now you need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
It started in Australia,
Yeah.
and they're beginning to compete with the real tarot cards, but it has gone so far south. And
Yeah.
they want to tap into the spiritual world, and they want to get to be divine. And
Yeah.
Part of the Bethel Church is into that, but in Australia, it's like all of it's
Yeah.
being taught in the churches,
Yeah.
not outside of the
Yeah.
church. It's Christians.
Bethel's, charismatic Pentecostal.
Yeah, Bill Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime you are looking for a new movement of God and experiential movements, you're putting yourself in a dangerous place. Because again, you're saying, God, what you've done is not good enough. We're looking for something else. I'm open to something else. By the way, some of the larger churches in our area have been sucked into this kind of stuff. One of the major churches in the region, I know from people who went there that somebody was running it was like a seance type group that was running through the church. It was basically meeting your spirit companion and something like that. Some local like New Ager just came into the church and is like, I'll just put my stuff up on the bulletin board. And so it was running groups out of the church. I don't know how long it was before they found out that was even happening, but like they were setting up like it was a Bible study, and they met, and then, but the,
Well, the Enneagram has taken over.
yep.
And a lot, even at some, we would consider theological conservative.
Right.
churches. And I mean, I had an argument with one of my fraternity brothers who's a youth pastor.
Yeah.
He said, oh, it's just personality.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even know most of this stuff till this past week. I was actually reading up on that and watched the Childers thing, and then started reading up from then. What? No. Oh, is it? Okay. Anytime you guys see something interesting, feel free to shoot it to me. Sometimes I got time to watch it, sometimes not. But that was an interesting one because you caught the background of it. And it's not a psychological test, but there are churches that are doing entire sermon series where they're rolling through like, here are the different personalities, and you fit this and you fit this, and like no idea what the backdrop is that kind of brought that whole thing about. Anyway, just be on our guard. Be on our guard. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Ongoing conversation on these issues. Let's pray. Let's talk to our Lord. Our Lord and God, I praise you that you have given us a gospel that is sufficient, that your word is powerful, that it's living and active, that it divides, and it shows us who we are. It deeply roots us in you. God, I pray that we would be centered in that, Father, that as the adversary throws out all sorts of ideas, Lord, that you would help our spirits be attentive to those and react strongly against anything that's not of you. Master, help us to be shrewd as serpents, innocent as doves, as we deal with those who are outside of you. And God, I pray that you would give us the opportunity to speak words or engage spiritually with those who fit this paradigm so that we might win more to you. We love you, O Lord. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I will say this, when it comes to ministering to people who fit this paradigm, if you find that you're at an impasse, one of the best things you can do is just start praying that God would show them through their spiritual interactions that he is real, and that you kind of turn them over to Satan and just scare the bejeepers out of them until they come to Christ, and allow that to happen. All right. Bye, folks. Oh, I missed my last thing. Just one thing. It's fine. Nah, I'll just close out. I use the illustration of this whole enterprise and dealing with new agers is like trying to put a push pin into a marble. Every time you try to nail them down on something, they just move. It's like, oh, that idea is not working for me. Well, I don't believe that anymore. They just go over here. And it's like, well, slightly different. You didn't quite understand what I meant. And they just kind of get out from underneath it. So it becomes a rather difficult task actually having meaningful conversations